We all have hopes and dreams. But what makes certain people devote a lifetime through sheer will and dedication to forging their dreams into reality? The answer lies in an unwavering belief in the importance of the dream and a passion that even after decades of work and struggle, still burns bright. In order to make this vision come true and the dreams that go with it come to life, it takes a team of remarkable, creative, and skillful people. These are the stars of the Lucky 3 Ranch.
In Loveland, Colorado, there's a ranch, the Lucky 3,
where Jasper and his friends all live in perfect harmony.
The ranch has things so fun to see, the large, the tall, the small.
And Jasper's brand new carousel is the newest of them all.
The brightest star that shines at the Lucky 3 Ranch is Jasper the Mule. His adventures can be enjoyed in the numerous books and videos produced by Meredith Hodges and illustrated by Bonnie Shields. Jasper resides in his own Jasper bunkhouse on the grounds of the Lucky 3 Ranch. Stepping into his house is like walking into one of his storybooks. In the living room is a diorama of the Happy Valley Ranch and a mural on the wall of the Bald Mountain landscape that Bonnie Shields painted behind it.
This is a great place for the kids,
It's
all the way around.
It's like living in the book.
Yeah,
They get to be a part of it.
yeah, they do.
Each morning, Jasper rises early and enjoys cooking a breakfast of oatmeal and hay in his cheerfully decorated kitchen corral, wrapped in Jasper and Moxie wallpaper. He carries his plate to the dining room, says grace, and enjoys these tasty treats. Jasper's days are filled with all kinds of activities. He makes appearances at elementary schools, Hearts and Horses fundraisers, and frequently attends Bishop Mule Days each Memorial Day weekend in Bishop, California. His favorite event is participating in the musical Tires class with the clowns. Jasper's favorite activity of all is when he leads the children's tours at the Lucky 3 Ranch. They play games together, go see the mules and donkeys, then he shows them his bunkhouse and signs autographs. To this day, Lucky 3 Ranch remains a cornerstone in the promotion of all equines, but particularly mules and donkeys. From its state-of-the-art teaching museum to its hands-on ranch tours to the beautiful equine sculptures that grace its grounds.
Jasper thought that a great addition to the children's tours would be a carousel of characters from his books in the backyard of the Jasper bunkhouse.
Jasper Carousel is a carousel with the Jasper characters on it. It's a smaller scale one.
When Meredith first approached me with this project, with her vision, I thought, oh, girl, you are out of your mind. But see, I've thought that before about her projects, and they just come to life. I mean, they're wonderful. So I've learned to just question for a split second and then go, yep, I think we can do that.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Yeah, that's how you do it. It's wonderful to have somebody that supports our art like this, and we feel like that our art is contributing to her art, which is writing and training and promoting these wonderful animals. And so it all works out good, I think.
Always well aware that our youth will be the stewards of the world's animals in the future, Meredith has found a way to convey her message of treating animals with compassion, patience, and respect to children everywhere with her own unique creation and lovable cartoon character, Jasper the Mule. Meredith agreed that it simply made sense that a miniaturized carousel featuring Jasper the Mule, his lady love Valentine, Okie Dokie the donkey, and his pal Moxie, the Jack Russell Terrier, would be a fabulous addition to Jasper's bunkhouse backyard. Bonnie Shields did the initial drawings for the carousel characters, and the project was off and running.
Meredith imagined this. It all came from Meredith's imagination. But then she talked to Bonnie, and Bonnie put it into 2 dimensions. And go from there.
Yeah, well, of course, we designed the characters for the books. And the characters from the books are going to be carried over to here, and they have to look the same.
Yes.
They have to look like the characters in the book, so that's kind of where we came in together, because I knew that you could handle the body work and all. And the only thing that really makes them different from a real live animal, because I try to keep my anatomy characters, the anatomy of my characters correct, and then I come along and I make the faces childlike, cartoony a little bit.
Bonnie's pretty whimsical. So working with Bonnie's awesome. She's a character. She's pretty quiet most of the time. She's got a pretty funny sense of humor.
Having two artists collaborating on one project could be a very risky proposition, but Bonnie Shields and Robin Laws hit it off right from the beginning. They agreed to work on Meredith's vision together. Robin began making the clay models for the characters from Bonnie's drawings and brought them to Meredith for inspection.
We do work together. We're not competitive at all.
No, and that, I think that's a rarity.
Oh, it is in the art world.
In the art world, I think it's
Oh,
a little
yeah.
rare.
Oh, yeah.
But you're a hoot. I think we've worked very well together.
Yeah.
And I think when that happens, it shows in the image. When you love what you're doing, it comes through in your work.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this.
Well,
It's fabulous.
So far.
The maquettes had a good start, but it was clear that they would need to be checked by their designer, Bonnie Shields. So Bonnie was flown to Colorado to inspect, correct, and apply her special talent of animating the models. When Bonnie and Robin finished their work, they approved the clay models with their signatures.
Meredith got me up here, made me get on that silly airplane.
Yes.
Anyway, and so I came and we spent a couple of days together, and it was a very simple job just to modify what you had already done to make them look like the characters in the book. And that was a really good deal, girl. Thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure for me, and it's so much fun to watch you just bring them to life. I mean, my work was okay.
Yeah.
But when you finished with them, then it brought the whole thing
Well, yeah, they look
around.
Yeah.
I've never built anything like this before. So we started off with a couple rough sketches, went to a structural engineer to do the actual engineering on the outside structure, made sure that everything was over-engineered, just because I didn't want nothing to break and I didn't want to have it underpowered.
This project, this carousel, is so multifaceted. It has taken all kinds of experience, talented people with innovative ideas to pull it off. I mean, Meredith's crew here on the ranch has literally built this thing with no plans. You can't Google plans for a carousel. You have to figure it out.
Steve Leppard began the groundbreaking with the Lucky 3 skid steer, and the designated lines for the carousel were scored in red. It was a huge hole.
So we had to dig a big hole to get enough room in there for people to work on it, so we're not crawling around on your belly, plus have enough room for all the equipment in there.
We dug most of it in a day. I think it was 22 feet by 5 foot deep.
We faced a couple weather challenges at first. Digging the hole, we had a couple rainstorms come in there, and when you get the dirt out here dug up like that, obviously it turns, driving it, it's when it's dry, you're driving over, it turns into dust, and as soon as it gets wet, it turns into soup. So we had a couple of times where we had to worry about that.
Videographer for Meredith's Lucky 3 Ranch, Blake Miller, set up time-lapse cameras. Ranch managers Chad and Steve Leppard could turn on the cameras every time they came out to work and record, and they recorded the entire project from beginning to end. What a terrific idea to ensure the documentation of the project in its entirety. The forms needed to be done in stages. The first pour was the base, and then the wall that would encompass the mechanical space beneath the carousel platform.
The concrete pad goes out, probably another foot wider than what the actual structure is. And we did that just so it was plenty stable.
While one crew worked building the forms for the concrete pour of the second wall that would encase the concrete for the mechanical space, Chad's temporary crew worked cutting the heavy metal support posts that would be set to support the carousel structure.
Multitasking is not unusual for my amazing team.
It was necessary to build forms to create a wall that would support the carousel structure, in addition to the 4-foot-high circular space in the middle, where the carousel mechanics would be housed.
Underneath the carousel is where all the mechanical parts are. There's the motor, there's a gearbox, the drive tire obviously, and so that takes up a lot of vertical space to get everything to work properly.
The center pole was incredibly heavy, and our LTR SkyTrack was used to set it dead center of the mechanical space, secured, and the install of the support columns commenced.
The center pole in there is actually, it's a 2-foot diameter steel tube. We cut it to the length we needed and dropped that in the ground there. So that actually acts as the center support for all the framing in the center of the buildings.
Once the support posts were all in place, Steve backfilled the entire structure.
Steve really enjoys driving the skidster. Actually, all the equipment. They're all just big toys to him.
Chad's welders worked all day and into the evenings on the parts of the carousel, cutting support posts and cross pieces.
The turntable was probably the biggest stickler on everything, on how to make everything rotate yet hold a center. So it's started off with obviously a circle, and we kind of cut it into pie shapes.
Yeah, we just cut everything up, cut plywood, cut it in pie shapes, and then glued it down to the steel, and then we put a second layer on top. We overlapped the joints and stuff, and then we put U-bolts in it to hold it to the steel so nothing would come apart.
Then they began to weld the sections for the turntable. The welding shop was set up in the LTR equipment barn close to the carousel project for ease and convenience.
We had to form the sidewalk pour that would stabilize the support posts and make the walkway around the carousel. Rebar lined the pour and braces were put in to keep the wall from collapsing on the mechanical space. And wouldn't you know, it snowed. But of course it was November. However, neither rain, nor wind, nor sleet, nor snow would stop this determined team.
When we were doing all the steel structure, trying to do it when it's not so cold. When you weld steel, you don't want to. Your steel has to be somewhat warm for you to weld it, otherwise it doesn't penetrate. The welds don't penetrate properly. So we had to preheat a couple parts when we were welding and when it was cold.
There was no way for the cement truck to enter the backyard and do the pour except to fit an extension onto the truck and go over the fence.
This was a great opportunity for Blake to fly his drone and document this part of the project. He was thrilled, and we all watched and laughed loudly when he zoomed the drone down on all of us spectators. When the sidewalk was poured, the crew leveled it in record time, and more welding took place on the top. While the welders were working that same day, the rest of us went out to lunch and met up with Robin Laws at the restaurant. She had the enlarged styrofoam figures with her for us to inspect.
Okie Dokie the donkey and Moxie the dog were way too large and would have to be scaled down before going to clay. The snow slowly melted after a few days as the welders finished their work on the roof cross pieces and secured the support posts. This was no job for the faint of heart, and the welders took great pride in their work as the roof finally took shape. The structure was stabilized.
When we were up there welding the roof there, we had SkyTrack boomed over there, but there was parts where we'd have a foot on a I guess you'd call it a rafter or a beam going across and hanging off like this and welding like this, hanging off the edge of it. If you go to the bottom of the pit, you're looking at about a 14-foot drop into the middle of that pit, and it's all concrete and steel at the bottom, so it's not very soft landing.
Steve was so excited to be able to rent a small backhoe to trench for the electricity to the carousel. He just bundled up and went to work. As his favorite t-shirt says, real men drive tractors.
We just got a backhoe and we dug from the shed to the thing, 2 foot deep.
Robin arrived a few days later with the blue styrofoam characters to make sure they were scaled to the size of the carousel, and that Moxie and Okie Dokie the donkey were now the appropriate size. They were scaled to size correctly, and Jasper was already in clay, but there was still more work to be done on Moxie and Valentine.
Although the work is sometimes daunting, our team members always sport a good attitude, and we have fun with all that we do.
There had to be a relationship for the size of the characters between the structure and what we had to deal with. We had to deal with little children. We didn't want a regular sized carousel animal. I tried to adjust the size to what smaller children, mostly smaller children, would be comfortable on, would be safe on, and it would still look right to them. And hoped I did that.
Moxie was not the proper size when we got it back. And the reason, it was not the enlarger's fault, it was our fault. Because we enlarged it, gave him the dimensions on a linear basis, not on a three-dimensional basis. So I did a lot of correcting on the door.
Chad managed the installation of the electrical system with a grin while he watched his dad shovel. Steve was tickled when the shoveling was done, and he was again able to climb back into the skid steer and do the backfill.
We've never regretted investing in our SkyTrack. It comes in handy all the time, and this is no exception. Steve laid the plywood base for the roof, while Chad supervised and set the SkyTrack for each new position. This father and son team works really well together.
Things come up and we just talk it out and come up with a solution.
Meanwhile, back at her studio, Robin is cutting, whacking, and resizing Valentine. Blake helped where he could and filmed frequently to get everything documented.
Then we had to enlarge Valentine, because again, the enlarge, we sent dimensional enlargement measurements, and instead of thinking of it in 3 dimensions, we were both thinking of it in 2 dimensions.
Back at the ranch, Steve laid the tar paper over the plywood subroof to protect the carousel from the weather. With Chad's assistance, he began work on the cupola that will sit on top. More artists at work. After another snowstorm, Chad and Steve resumed work on installing the cupola and finishing the trim on the subroof. Chad cut the pieces and Steve screwed them in. It's all about teamwork.
We started building the overhead structure, which is everything in that building is steel. There's not a piece of wood in that thing, except for the ceiling, I believe, is wood. Some of the biggest surprises and challenge I would say is attaching the wood for the ceiling and then the wood for the roof on the outside to the metal structure. We were using special drills and taps to go through there.
Trimming the roof is easy with the SkyTrack and teamwork, but even with the best team, it's all just a bit time-consuming.
We put garage doors on the building to keep the elements from getting to the artwork on the inside and from damaging any of the mechanicals. We get some driving winds in the winter, and we do have irrigation going on, so we didn't want the pit flooding or filling up full of snow and water.
During bad winter weather, Steve and Chad were able to work on the flower boxes for the carousel. In keeping with the Jasper the Mule storybooks, bright red siding was installed on the outside.
That was Meredith's idea for the colors on that. We kind of asked her, what colors do you want this thing to be? And she wanted it to be bright and kind of cheerful, so she picked red for the thing there. We hired a company that specializes in steel roofing and siding. They came and finished the roof and the siding. Obviously, we had them take the siding on the inside for durability.
Chad was so excited when the red siding went up that he just had to see how his gold ball would look on top.
The bright red siding was put up on the cupola, and Chad tested the electric doors. Kristen went up to Robin's studio to take pictures of the clay enlargements to send to Bonnie for inspection so she could see if she wanted any more done before she came back out to Colorado from Idaho. It's a long trip. Bonnie drives because she hates airplanes. It was time to backfill the entire yard around the carousel in preparation for seeding the new grass. Chad permanently attached the gold ball to the top of the cupola.
It's actually a flagpole topper for like the big commercial grade flags and all that. And so that's what we put up there.
Bonnie flew out from Idaho this time. She and Robin spent 4 days finessing the characters for their trip to the Molders. Although there were time-lapse cameras in Robin's studio in Cheyenne, Wyoming, The day after Bonnie's arrival, Chad, Bailey, Meredith, and Blake went to her studio and filmed for one day to make sure everything was well documented.
We had a great time. What a bunch of characters.
When she gave me the two-dimensional images, I needed to figure out how large to make the model, and we call that a maquette, in order to enlarge it to the pieces that were going to go on the carousel, the regular pieces. So I got that figured out, and then I sculpted those in clay and did all the details, all the stuff in clay, and then Bonnie came and looked, and she changed the parts that needed to make it look like the characters in the book. Then I take those clay images to a mold maker, and the mold maker makes a rubber mold.
At the end of the week, Meredith, Bonnie, and Robin took the large clay models to the molders and the maquettes to art casting for patina. Bonnie sent drawings to art castings showing desired colors for the patina. Meredith took pictures of the flowers that would be in the planter boxes around the carousel, so Bonnie could match the colors she would be painting at the base of the maquette that she was working on in Idaho.
Art castings got the patinas done in record time, and they looked beautiful. They will be mounted on the base when Bonnie gets it finished.
There will be at least 20, 25 people involved in the project. So all of those are artists and in their own right. The mold maker, that's an art. The foundry workers, that's definitely an art. And they're trying to imagine what we have in our minds and put that into the artwork that we've done. So it's a collaboration with many, many, many people.
Steve worked diligently for 2 days, putting in the ceiling supports. Once the ceiling supports were done, it was time to plastic the interior and sandblast the center pole to ready it for primer and paint. Chad and Steve worked together to put up the plywood ceiling that would house the lighting. Then it was time to saw the holes for the lighting, trim the plywood, and install the electrical in the basement for the turntable. Chad and Kendon worked on the turntable assembly. They are ace welders. The steel was extremely heavy and difficult to work with, so they did it in sections.
Calculating the wheel assembly also took the brain of an engineer, and that was clearly Chad's expertise.
On the pole, there's another table below that has, it's a table for the rollers on the inside of the turntable to roll on. And then they actually have, we have rolling wheels that actually center itself on the pole. So we have a set of wheels going this way, set of wheels going this way, and that locates the turntable off the center pole. And that allows everything to spin around without it clanging back and forth and being pretty rickety, actually.
Then came the install of the turntable base. Steve, Chad, and Kendon are a valuable part of our team.
It was finally time for Steve to paint the ceiling Jasper blue. And Chad installed the can lighting. It was now beginning to take on the ambience of a real Jasper carousel.
We had Bonnie Shields come out and paint the center part of the post with Jasper characters and the 20 Mule Team borax wagon.
Bonnie drove to her Jasper bunkhouse home in Colorado and started work on the 20 Mule Team on the center pole, as they are included in our latest children's book, Jasper and April Mule's Day.
Well, what I'm doing here, what I'm attempting to do here, is put the 20 Mule Team with the borax wagon going up this center pole. That's very simple, right? Okay, we'll see. Yeah, it's really full of details, and details are important because we want to get it right. We are an educational bunch. We're trying to teach the right things, and you have to start with the right things. And so we're trying to do this very representationally, and but also in a way that they can entertain themselves, because as they go around on the merry-go-round, their view changes a little bit.
While Bonnie worked on her drawings, Meredith finished putting in the flowers around the carousel and in the planter boxes of the Jasper bunkhouse back patio. Blake and Robbie enthusiastically filmed the eventful day and spent some time with the mules. Robin showed up and the two talented artists were truly thrilled to see each other again. Blake and Robbie prepped the ladies for the interview and then went to setting up the equipment. Chad hung out to be available if needed, and the interview was a hoot. Bonnie spent the next 6 days working on the 20-mule team that wrapped around the center pole.
It took me 2 days to do this pencil drawing on the tissue paper. And what I'm doing is I'm transferring this little bit by little bit to the pole with a little piece of graphite paper.
It was extremely intricate and tedious work, but she did a spectacular job and finally got her done. She'll be back again soon to add the rest of the Jasper book characters.
On September 9th, the maquette was finished and delivered to the Lucky 3 Ranch. It was placed on the dining room table just inside the door from where the larger carousel was being constructed. Bonnie returned on October 9th and spent another week painting the Jasper series characters on the center pole, watching the 20-mule team go by.
It was 20 degrees outside, but Chad constructed a false door on the carousel so we would not have to leave the vertical door open. Then we put 2 space heaters in the room and kept Bonnie warm while she diligently worked during the day and evenings to finish the job.
She'd spend hours in there painting at a time, and obviously it'd wear on you, so try to make things as easy as we could for her.
Blake and his daughter Noelle filmed Bonnie while she was working to supplement the time-lapse cameras that we had running every time anyone did any work inside or outside of the carousel. Chad and I stood by to lend a hand when needed.
When I was helping her, it was just mainly being a gopher. Hey, I need this. Okay, I'll run and get it for you. And then making some modifications to things so that she can paint.
On November 13th, Meredith, Robin Laws, and the Lucky 3 Ranch crew went down to Art Castings to inspect the figures and figure out just where the supports would need to be.
It was a very exciting time to see the figures finally coming to life after so long.
On January 1st, 2020, Robin called from Art Castings and said they were having an issue with Valentine.
We consulted with her in December and came to the conclusion we would need a jump underneath her to help support her in the jumping position. Art Castings had finished the jump, but they had her on too much of an angle. The rider would easily slip off her back, so we had to have them adjust the angle accordingly.
Since the figures were now so close to being finished, Steve began to work on the permanent turntable. First, he needed to remove the temporary plywood and grind the frame to make sure the surface would be conducive for the glue to stick. The permanent boards would be both bolted and glued to the frame.
We ground down the steel and stuff, sanded the steel down so there wasn't no oils and stuff on it, and we glued it. And then we took U-bolts and then drilled holes in it and put the U-bolts down and put straps on the bottom of the steel and bolted it to it.
The next step was to cut the plywood flooring, then glue and clamp it to the frame. It would require 24 hours to set. It took a couple of days to finish the gluing and bolting, and then trimming the mechanical access door. Cutting the boards was extensive and time-consuming. Making sure they all laid flush was another important consideration. After letting the glue set for 2 days, Steve returned and glued the remaining panels, leaving the space for the mechanical access door. He screwed in boards to create pressure on the new glued panels. Afterwards, he measured the circumference around the turntable from the walls and drew the lines to be cut around its outer edge. The next step was to put down the second layer of plywood for the main surface of the turntable. Steve took out the screwed-in pressure boards on the surface, then he trimmed the circumference of the bottom layer of plywood. Then he and Chad measured and cut the boards for the main surface of the turntable and laid them down. The next day, Steve got into the mechanical pit and made screw holes where the U-bolts would go around the metal braces of the turntable. Then Steve got on top and countersunk the space for the U-bolts so nobody would trip over them once the figures were installed and the AstroTurf was put down. The following day, Steve had to cut the access door space from the top surface of the turntable. First, he countersunk the remaining U-bolts, measured for the access door, and then cut the hole. On January 31st, Steve and Chad measured the area in the middle of the pole where Bonnie's painting would remain. Then Chad put plastic over it for protection. They measured the center pole for the American flag, top and bottom. They taped off the border around Bonnie's painting, top and bottom, then put plastic on the ceiling and floor to protect those areas from overspray.
On February 11th, Art Castings called and wanted our help with Jasper's stirrups. Mounting the stirrups was posing a problem. We did not expect what we saw when we got there. We thought they were just working on Jasper's patina and accessories, but when we got there, we found they were all done with the patina on all 4 figures. They were ready to put on the final coat of sealer a whole month ahead of schedule. We were thrilled.
2 days later, Steve climbed back into the mechanic space and put all the nuts onto the U-bolts in the turntable. Then he went back on top and checked the status of Chad's base paint job on the center pole.
The next day, on February 14th, we got the template for the outside stall posters that would hang on the doors when they were closed and when the carousel was not in use.
When the doors are up, this is Jasper's carousel. But when the doors are down, this is Jasper's barn. So he's always here.
We needed to make sure it was the correct size before doing all 8 posters. It looked great.
After checking the size of the outside poster template, Steve and Chad checked on the paint job on the center pole to find that the paint on the top part of the pole was fine, but the bottom part of the pole had rippled and would have to be sanded down and redone. Chad attempted just a light sanding and then repainting, but as it turned out, he had to sand it all down to the metal and start again with the primer and white paint.
We had an issue with the pole when we were painting it. The paint we were using is an automotive grade paint, so it's really sensitive to chemicals that aren't supposed to be there. And we put the primer down, everything was clear, it was okay, and as soon as we started putting color down, we started having some issues where the paint was wrinkling, and that's caused by solvents usually that are trapped underneath there.
On February 18th, Art Castings called and said the figures were ready to be picked up. So we hooked up the trailer, picked up the AstroTurf, and got them all safely back to the ranch. They will be stored in the trailer barn until the center pole is fully painted.
Next, Chad and Steve measured the distance above and below Bonnie's painting, taped off the bottom of the center pole, and painted the red stripes.
Chad had patterns of stars cut out, and then we stuck them on there, and then we just spray painted everything, and then peeled the stars, and there it was.
Steve worked on peeling the 100 stars for 2 days until they were all done. It was tedious because it had to be perfect. Chad installed the carousel motor in the mechanical access crawl space.
The motor that drives the turntable in there, it's an industrial 10 horsepower 3-phase motor. We have to use a 3-phase motor so that we can have that control over the ramp up speeds and the final drive speed and all that.
On Wednesday, February 26th, we did a formal shoot around taking the figures to the carousel to set them. We did interviews with Chad and Robin about the setting process, including what was discussed at Art Castings several weeks before about the stirrups and the jump.
Chad and Steve came back after lunch and measured and sunk the holes for the figures. Chad swept the turntable deck and then brought in the AstroTurf. They laid down the AstroTurf and glued the seams. The next day they came in, checked the seams, punched the holes through the AstroTurf, and secured the bolts from the figures to the turntable frame.
So when we mounted the sculptures to it, that's kind of when we mount, same way as when we mount all the rest of the sculptures out here, we put our threaded rod in the bottom of their feet. They have a nut welded into them for mounting them. And then we put them in the location we want them, mark out around that, and then drill that out.
Chad and Steve resumed work on the carousel, finishing the access door, then trimming and tacking the edges of the AstroTurf.
When we first mounted everything down, We had an issue with Jasper. His one of his front feet was too short, so it was hanging up in the air, and so we needed to have everything on the ground so that it needed to have 4 points of contact. Otherwise, it would just wobble back and forth like this. So I had to go back to the foundry, and they modified it and brought it back when they were done, and we finished the bolting process then.
Once the statues were set, it was time to go back and do touch-up work on the stripes on the center pole. They had to be taped off so the lines could be perfectly straight. We had to wait for it to dry and then remove the tape.
We tested the turntable while people were riding the statues and found that the turntable was scraping in some places and would need to be raised.
When I first tested it, I was like, oh, thank God. Never doing anything like that before. It was nerve-wracking. I was like, is this thing going to tear itself apart? Is it going to even work at all?
When Chad got underneath in the mechanics pit, he discovered that the pulley system would need to be moved. He opted to rebuild it so it would be easier to remove if there are further issues going forward. On a custom project like this, it's often a case of trial and error. Once Chad got the system rebuilt, Steve installed it again, drilling new holes and putting the mount in its new position.
For the finishing touches, Steve carefully applied the thin gold pinstriping that framed Bonnie's painting between the two American flags. It was just what the pole needed to make it pop.
The electrician was finally scheduled to come in and hook up the motor for the turntable. The yard around the carousel had gotten flattened and the grass had died, so Steve rototilled and prepared the ground to be reseeded. Chad and Steve set the posts for the vinyl fence that would go around and hide the propane tank. This would make for cleaner photographs of the Jasper Carousel yard.
With all the doors open, the Jasper Carousel is finally completed except for one more thing. We will need to have one of our independent contractors come out and rate the speed on the motor so that it will speed up and slow down gradually and not abruptly. With all the doors closed, the Jasper Carousel becomes Jasper's barn, thanks to our graphics artist, Greta Adams. The posters are easily installed with magnets so we can keep the doors down during the first part of our children's tours. Then we can quickly take down the posters and open the doors so the kids can ride the carousel at the end of the tours. We finally got the speed rated on the turntable. It was time for a test ride. The kids were having such a good time. We adults could not resist. Everyone needed to have a turn. What fun! The test was a complete success. So we closed up the Jasper barn and we all went home with big smiles on our faces.
Jasper's idea was the very best ever. It was the end of the project, but the beginning of a lot of whimsical fun and excitement for the children's tours for many years to come.
I don't know if there was a most rewarding time. It's just the whole project altogether was just fun from from beginning to end. It's something that's way outside anybody's wheelhouse. It was a welcome challenge and something different than the normal everyday thing.
There's no challenges in life. There's only opportunities.
I think if Jasper's sitting on it when it starts going, he'll love it. If he tries to get on it while it's moving, he'll be like, "What the heck is this?" And I think he'll be happy to see the carousel in his backyard.
Oh boy!
In Loveland, Colorado, there's a ranch, the Lucky Three,
where Jasper and his friends all live in perfect harmony.
The ranch has things so fun to see, the large, the tall, the small.
And Jasper's brand new carousel is the newest of them all.
It's big and bright and red and white, green and gold and blue. A storybook that's come to life for Jasper's friends and you. There's Jasper, Moxie, Valentine, and Okie Dokie too. Come ride 'em in the carousel, make a memory brand new.
Peekaboo!
Oh, get up there! Ride 'em, cowboy! Hey, yep.
Whoa! That's great! Woo-hoo! The end.
So come on in, go round and round with Jasper and his friends.
At the ranch we call the Lucky Three, the fun just never ends.
This ranch has things so fun to see, the large, the tall, the small.
And Jasper's brand new carousel is the newest of them all.
It's big and bright, red and white, it's green and gold and blue. A storybook that's come to life for Jasper's friends and you.
There's Jasper,
Moxie,
Valentine,
and Okie Dokie too.
come ride 'em in the carousel, make the memory brand new. So come on and go round and round with Jasper and his friends. At the ranch we call the Lucky Three, the fun just never ends. On Jasper's brand new carousel, the fun just